My name is Dom Douglas, and I am back-to-back XWW Commentator of the Year. With that comes some responsibilities, but also a lot of fun and excitement, and I'm never ashamed to look like a complete fool. Speaking of that, I love playing Magic the Gathering, so much so that I kind of think I play it a little bit too much, and I have some opinions. So now, XtremeTVOnline.com and XWW Wrestling on YouTube presents my podcast where I talk about Magic the Gathering. It's the Goblin Grenade Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for, once again, the Goblin Grenade Podcast. As I set things up here, we got a little bit of a different going on here. This is the third episode of my Commander decks as basically from February 21st of 2024. I don't know when this episode's going to air. This is basically done just in case there's too much of a backlog with me doing editing and all that other stuff, and I just can't get around to doing an episode on time. Every Wednesday, 2 p.m. on Xtreme World Wrestling's YouTube channel, XWW Wrestling. Thank you for watching, and then here we go. We are now part 3 of my 4-part series of Commander decks, and we're starting off with Talrand here. Talrand the Sky Summoner is a 2 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. This is a mono blue deck, one of the few mono color decks I actually have in Commander. And before you say I have 30 counter spells in the deck, this must not be fun to play against. I do have 30 counter spells in the deck, not the play style I go for here. So this is Talrand. This is also a plastic case, and I forgot where this is even from. Ultra Pro. It's an Ultra Pro plastic case. It's a see-through one, and yeah, I kind of like them, but I really don't. They're kind of heavy. They're unwieldy, and it does get difficult to put the cards in. That being said, let's go over some of the more key cards in Talrand. The play style of this Talrand is different than what you think. Yes, I play a lot of counter spells in this deck. I think at last count there was like 30 something in here, but I equate this to that goofy guy at the bar who's okay for the first 11 shots, and then on the 12th shot wants to fight the entire bar all at once. And basically I wait many turns, hold up a ton of mana, get everybody scared of me, and then on that 12th turn, before my turn, and it's, my opponent passes the turn to me, I immediately start casting cantrips, which are 1 mana draw cards, and then countering it to make a field of 2/2s and 1/1s and a whole bunch of other crazy creatures. I flood the board and basically say, okay, I'm going to swing for lethal on everybody on my next turn. Having stuff like Doctrine of Perfection, which is a 3 and 2 blue for a insect horror 5/4 flying creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, transform Doctrine of Perfection. Doctrine of Perfection turns into Final Iteration, which is a 6/5 flyer. Wizards you control get +2/+1 and half flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard token onto the battlefield. Murmuring Mystic is a 3 and a blue for a 1/5 human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue wizard, a blue bird illusion creature token with flying. Narset, part of the Veils, because it's a mono blue deck. We need Narset mainly for the static ability. It's a 1 and 2 blue for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. That's not going to affect us at all. I don't play many wheels in the deck at all, not many in blue. There are some, but I don't generally draw cards with this as much as you would think. The -2, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest into the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay. Primal Amulet for 4. instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Primal Amulet. Then if there are 4 more charge counters on it, remove those counters and transform Primal Amulet. Primal Amulet transforms into Primal Wellspring, which is a land. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. When mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copies. As you can see, there's a lot of interesting things we get to do with Talrand. Mirari Conjecture is a saga. On the first step, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Second step, return target sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And then third, until end of turn, whenever you cast the instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. I love the copy spells in this deck. Solve the Equation is one of the better loots, better tutors in blue to find an instant or sorcery spell. Obviously, counter spell. We play a bunch of them. I'm pretty sure it's between like 25 and 30 at this point. But as I said earlier, my play style is I'm going to counter a whole bunch of my spells before the step, before my next turn, make and flood the board with tokens. Negate, counter non-creature spell. Game-winning card right here. Rise from the Tides. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. With Mirari Conjecture, we can cast that and copy it twice, and it gets really silly really fast. Flood of Tears, return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. And then Archmage Meritus is the card draw. For 2 and a blue, 2 blue, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. So my Talrand does Talrand things, but I am not countering everything. I even tell the table, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to counter spells unless it's like crazy stuff like Craterhoof, or, you know, something's going to win the game very fast. And I also tell them, hey, this is how this deck plays. I am the cool guy at the bar for the first 11 shots, and then on the 12th shot, I'm going to fight everybody. And that's how it goes down. And even warning people, they don't expect it. Because with all the ways that I can just cast cheap spells, just getting a crazy amount of tokens on the field does wonders, even if they're not being pumped. We have a Gamegenic box here. It's blue. The camera. This camera is great. My cell phone camera is great, but not for this one. This is one of the more uniquely bizarre Rule Zero decks with the best sleeves I own. This is my boomstick. We are talking Gimli counter of kills and Legolas counter of kills. The reason why it needs to be Rule Zero is they are legendaries, but they're not partners. And I always felt in the Lord of the Rings set, these two cards should have been partners, and they missed a golden opportunity, I felt. Legolas counter of kills, 2 green and a blue for an elf archer, 2/3 with reach. Whenever you scry, if Legolas counter of kills is tapped, you may untap it. Do this only once each turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Legolas. And then Gimli counter of kills is 3 and a red for a legendary creature, dwarf, warrior, for a 4/3 with trample. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, Gimli counter of kills deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. I felt this should have been partnered. They're not a crazy set of cards, if you will, in conjunction with being partnered, even if you can only partner with Legolas counter of kills. Obviously, we're playing dwarves and elves, but some of the key cards, Elvish Mariner, for 2 and a blue for an elf pilot, a 3/2. Whenever Elvish Mariner attacks, scry 1. Obviously, we're going to activate Legolas on that. Whenever you scry, tap up to X target non-land permanents, where X is that number of cards looked at while scrying this way. Then we have Galadriel of Lothlorien, 1 green and a blue. Yeah, I love Lord of the Rings, if you couldn't tell. For a legendary creature, Elf Noble, 3/3, and the lines of text on it. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you choose, you choose a creature other than Galadriel of Lothlorien as your ring bearer, scry 1. Whenever you scry, you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card revealed this way, put it into the battlefield tapped. So it's an easy way to mana ramp. Gimli's Axe, obviously, I'm a flavor guy. We're gonna have Gimli's Axe in there for 2 and a red for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0. As long as equipped creature is legendary, it has menace, meaning it can't be blocked by 1 creature. It has to be blocked by 2 or more, and it's an equipped cost of 2. Just like we said, Galadriel Bow, which is basically Legolas's bow, for 2 and a green for an equipment flash. Be cast at any time. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Untap that creature. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has reach, meaning it can block creatures with flying, and it's an equipped cost of 2. Celeborn the Wise, 3 and a green for a 3/3 elf noble. Whenever you attack with 1 or more elves, scry 1. Whenever you scry, Celeborn the Wise gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each card looked at while scrying this way. And then, underappreciated still to this day, Reclamation Sage. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. I have yet to play this deck against human beings. I'm very confident the Rule 0 conversation will be easy. Come on, it's Legolas and Gimli counter of kills. No one is going to be mad at me having those as my commanders. What's the next deck? I'm going through these kind of fast. But that's okay. One of my favorite decks, Otrimi the Ever Playful, for 3 black, green, and a blue. This is the Mutate deck. It's not the Precon, obviously. I made this deck because I saw it one time and I forgot where. I don't know if it was Game Nights or another Commander game, but I saw it and I just fell in love with it. So what does Otrimi the Ever Playful do? Well, it's got Mutate for 1 black, green, and a blue. Now, most of the time, you can cash the commander for Mutate cost, and if I'm not mistaken, they may have changed it, but generally speaking, you don't have to pay commander tax for that. I, however, make the concession that if that's the case, I will still pay commander tax for Mutate. I know that's what it's been a while since I played the deck. I don't know if the rules changed, but I do know that I would say I will pay a commander tax because this deck would be stupid without paying the commander tax. Basically, you can attach it to a non-human creature, and you can stack the creature to have a ton of abilities, and whenever it mutates, and you put another creature on there, you get stacks of triggers because of that. Trample for 6/6, whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, return target creature card with Mutate from your graveyard to your hand. So we get to constantly feed back our hand with that on board. Now, some pet cards are in here as well. Wilderness Reclamation for 3 and a green. I've been singing this card's virtues in Commander in green for a long time. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Auspicious Strix for 4 and a green, or for Mutate 3 and a green. For a 6/6, whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile X permanent cards. Then, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated, put those permanent cards onto the battlefield. We are trying to cheat so many things in and just make this super powerful, invincible creature that nobody can get past. It's kind of like the Voltron deck with equipment, but I'm using creatures instead. Troll Aesthetic for 1 green for a Troll Shaman 3/2. Troll Aesthetic can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. And then 1 and a green to regenerate Troll Aesthetic. We have a bunch of hexproof creatures in here. We have a bunch of creatures that regenerate or can't be target of spells or abilities because that's that our opponents control, because that's what we're trying to do with the Mutate. Get it onto something that they can't touch easily, that they can't remove off the board very easily. Binding of the Old Gods is a great uncommon for any deck running Golgari. The first step, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Second step, search your library for a forest card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Forest card can be any. Can be the Triomes, can be the new Survey lands, can be anything as long as it has forest in the subtype. And then finally, creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. 3 Visits is an amazing card. Search your library for a forest card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Once again, that hits Triomes, that hits Duels, that hits Shocks, that hits the new Surveys, that hits so many lands. Borokos, Apex of Forever for 2 green, blue, and a black. For a 6/6 Nightmare Beast Elemental. They fit that in there. But it's also got a mutate of 2 Simic Hybrid green. Trample, you may cast Borokos Apex of Power from your graveyard using its mutate ability. So if this is in the graveyard, we can just mutate it right back onto the battlefield. Glade Cover Scout for 1 green for a 1/1 Elf Scout with Hexproof. Once again, it's one of those cards it's hard to get rid of off the board. It's kind of like Boggles. If you know that, I apologize. And then my favorite card, Night Veil Predator in the deck. For 2 blue, 2 black, for a vampire 3/3 with flying, Death Touch, and Hexproof. So the play pattern here is just literally Voltroning with creatures until Otrimi is like a 10/10 that searches for 5 creatures whenever it mutates and kills X amount of permanents on the field whenever it mutates. You get so many cool stacked abilities, and it is kind of like a Voltron deck, but it's using creatures instead. That's why I like playing this every now and again. I have noticed it is very powerful in its current form. And remember, I'm not playing OG Duels. I'm not playing Mana Crypts, Mana Vaults, Ancient Tombs, Jeweled Lotuses. I'm not playing any of those crazy fast mana to make a competitive CDH in any of my decks. And this Otrimi deck slaps. Next up is one of the newer decks that I have, and I have these old Game Genic horizontal boxes. You know, this is the Game Genic like tall box, stand tall, and right next to it is the Game Genic. This one is the Game Genic like long ways box. I like the long ways boxes way better than these. We have Millicent Relentless Revenant, 5 white and blue for a Spirit Soldier 4/4. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each spirit you control. It's flying. Whenever Millicent or another non-token spirit you control dies or deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. This is my spirits deck. It's one of the newer ones. I've gotten to play with it 1 time against people, and it did good. Mind you, when I'm playing cards like Annoying Procession, yes, annoying, not anointed, you get asked not to play the deck. For 3 and a white for an enchantment, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. Now, this card, I have a playset of, because back in Amonkhet, that was the deck I was rolling with when they were like $5 to $10 a piece. So that's why I have a whole 4 or 5 of these Annoying Processions, because I was playing the deck in Standard before I got into Commander. Moonshaker Cavalry, also known as Craterhoof, the Spirit, for 5 white. For a Spirit Knight 6/6 flying. Whenever this enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. As I said, it's the Craterhoof for spirits. That is one of the game enders. Planar Cleansing, I am playing a board wipe in this deck, and Planar Cleansing, sometimes this deck does not fire off fast enough, and I don't have the board presence, so Planar Cleansing destroys all non-land permanents. I like to reset the game back to 0 if things are not going my way fast enough. Jubilant Skybonder for 1 and 2 hybrid Azorius mana. For a human wizard, yes, I know, it's not a spirit, it's a 2/2. It flies, but creatures you control, if flying, have spells your opponents cast that target this creature cost 2 more to cast. So if they want to, like, target, I don't know, Millicent with a lightning bolt, they have to pay 2 more. So instead of it being 1 red, it's now 2 and 1 red. It's definitely protection for my whole board. Rally the ranks, 1 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. It's always going to be spirits. Just not even going to lie. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So it's an anthem effect for our spirits. Unbreakable Formation, 2 and a white, which is basically poor man's Teferi protection, if you ask me. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And Adamant, if you cast a spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. As I said, it's poor man's Teferi's protection. Everything gets indestructible. Also, it doesn't protect them from, like, being exiled, but, if it's destroy all creatures like planar cleansing, they live. Sire of the Storm for 4 blue for a 3/3 spirit with flying. Whenever you cast a spirit or an arcane spell, you may draw a card. We're going to be drawing a lot of cards with our spirits in this deck, with this card. Catilda, Dawnheart Martyr for 1 white. Flying lifelink protection from vampires. Catilda Dawnheart's power and toughness are equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. And it's got disturb 3 blue, 3 white. If it's in the graveyard, you can cast it for its disturb cost. And it's flipped. If it leaves play as it's flipped, it's exiled instead. And it turns into Catilda's Rising Dawn, which is a legendary enchantment aura, so it needs to be equipped to a creature. Enchanted creature is flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and gets +X/+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. If Catilda Rising Dawn would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. It's a good card to have. Geist of St. Geist of St. Taft for 1 white and a blue. For a Spirit Cleric for a 2/2 with Hexproof. Whenever it attacks, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Exile that token at the end of combat. Geist of St. Taft is still a great card. And then finally, second appearance of Reflections of Lajara. 4 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Spirit. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell instead. So we get to do a lot of copying shenanigans with our spirits with Reflections of Lajara. The deck performed admirably well in not only testing, but also in going up against people. It was super competitive, and I got to flood the board with a bunch of spirits. And that's never an issue. And then, second to last deck, one of the funnier decks that I have. I'll tell you why, because it's one of the only few commander decks that I own that has an alternate win con. We got the Clear Game Genic box for this one. Goshentai of Life's Origin. Yes, that's right. Shrines. For 3 and a green for a legendary enchantment creature, Shrine. It is a 3/4. Its first ability, Wooburg, which is 1 color of every mana, and tap it, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then its second line of text. Whenever Goshentai of Life's Origins or another non-token shrine comes into the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 colorless shrine enchantment creature token. We're doing shrines here. We are doing shrines. Actually, let's do it that way because one of the big things is Sanctum of All. It is a shrine enchantment Wooburg from M21, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library and graveyard for a shrine card and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If the ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers an additional time. This is one of our key cards in the deck, and when we do have our tutors in this deck, we do search for Sanctum of All. The alternate win con is Maze's End. Because we run a lot of gates in this deck, because the mana base for this would be stupidly ridiculous if not. Maze's End enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it to add 1 colorless mana. 3 and tap, return Maze's End to its owner's hand. Search your library for a gate card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. So we play, I think, about 15 or so gates in the deck. Once again, another copy of Anointed Procession in this because it's a token-making deck. Enchantress Presence, 2 and a green. For an enchantment, whenever we cast an enchantment, draw a card. Almost the entire deck is enchantments. Shrine Steward is a very underrated card in this deck for 5 generic mana for an artifact construct for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura or shrine card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. One of the many tutors that we have available to us. This one's weird. Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. 5 white and a black. For a legendary sorcery, we can only cast it if we have a legendary permanent on the battlefield. So it has to say legendary. Whether that be an artifact, an enchantment, a creature, it needs to have the legendary subtype. And return all legendary permanent cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Almost everything we play is legendary. Gond Gate is the card that makes this deck cook with fire. It is a gate. It is a land. Gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. Tap to add 1 colorless. Tap to add 1 color of any 1 mana of any color that a gate you control can produce. This is the whole reason why this deck actually works as well as it does. Sterling Grove, for a green and a white enchantment. Other enchantments we control have Shroud. They can't be the targets of spells or abilities. 1 and sacrifice Sterling Grove. Search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle, then put that card on top. So basically, you search your library, reveal the card, shuffle your library, put the card that you revealed on top. Once again, another tutor. Jukai Naturalist, for green and a white. Lifelink, enchantment creature spells we cast cost 1 less to cast. Enchantment spells we cast cost 1 less to cast. And then, it's just one of the many shrines that we play. Sanctum of Harvest, 2 and a green for a legendary enchantment shrine. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase 1, add X mana of any 1 color where X is the number of shrines you control. So we're trying to win by not just flooding the board with shrines, but also getting multiple triggers off those shrines from Sanctum of All. And with as many all the mazes and gates with all the gates that we play, this deck can secretly win from out of nowhere. I mean, yeah, obviously it gets a little known when you play a Maze's End the first time. But all the green ramp spells that we have always look for gates. So we play like 4 or 5 of them, and the first gate we look for is Gond Gate out of the gate. And that just gets the deck firing on every single cylinder that you can think of. Because every gate you now control comes into play untapped, meaning your 15 to 20 cent gate now is basically a better shock land because it comes into play untapped and you don't have to pay life for it. Yeah, you can't search for it because of the mana types, but if we built the deck correctly, which I did, all the ramp spells that we have look for gates. And finally, the main event. One of my favorite decks. One of the few that has a pet name. Ghalta, Primal Hunger. Or as I like to call it, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And if you get that reference, you're just as old as I am. Congratulations. Take some pills for your back. They're hurting. I know mine is. Ghalta, Primal Hunger, 10 and 2 green for a legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur. That's 12/12 with Trample. And Ghalta costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. Why is it called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Dom Douglas, you may ask? Well, this is vehicles. we are playing Ghalta vehicles. And this deck, main focus is to get Ghalta out for 2 every time. Does not matter how many times Ghalta has died, short of getting rid of the entire board, vehicles and artifacts included, Ghalta's coming out on 2 every turn. That being said, some of the highlights, and there's a bunch of them in this deck. Goreclaw, Terror of Calcisma for 3 and a green for a 4/3 legendary bear. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. Whenever Goreclaw attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample till end of turn. Esika's Chariot for 3 and a green for a legendary artifact vehicle, which is a 4/4. When Esika enters the battlefield, create 2 2/2 green cat creature tokens. Whenever Esika attacks, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. It's a crew cost of 4. Colossal Magistry for 2 and a green. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. It's an enchantment, and we have Ghalta and we have vehicles. We're doing it every turn. Keeper of Fables for 3 and 2 green for a cat 4/5. Whenever 1 or more non-human creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Drawing card is always good. Favorite 3 words in Magic Gathering, along with Inventor's Fair for a legendary land. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain 1 life. That's pretty awesome. We're going to be doing that because we're playing vehicles. We play a ton of vehicles in this deck. I think like 20. And then 4 and tap to sack it. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it onto your hand, and then shuffle your library. Activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts. Cloud Key, an artifact for 3 mana. As Cloud Key enters the battlefield, choose artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. It's always going to be artifact. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. Mystic Forge, 4 mana artifact. You may look at the top card of your library. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an artifact card or a colorless non-land card. Tap, pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library. We play a lot of artifacts. It's kind of like having an extra card in hand. Defense of the Heart, my favorite card from the list that I got. And it's cheeky as all you know what. 3 and a green for an enchantment. During your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, put them into play, shuffle your library afterwards. We get to have so many options when this thing pops off, and we get to look for so many cards, usually like a Goreclaw or some of the bigger things. Ugin the Ifritable, 6 mana planeswalker with 4 loyalty, mainly for the static. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. 2 or 1? Yeah, cost 2 less to cast. So all of our artifacts are colorless. So already, that's, mana reductions on there. The +1, -3 almost don't matter, but I need to read it because the printing is small. +1, exile top card of your library face down, look at it, create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put the exile card into your hand. -3, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Almost never really using the abilities except to uptick just to get, a little bit more out of it because we're mainly concerned about the static ability. Now the Stampede, 3 and a green for a human knight. Dinosaur spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. I did say the deck's name was Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and we do play a lot of dinosaurs in the deck. Along with vehicles. Semblance Anvil, one of the newer cards, for a 3-drop artifact with imprint. When Semblance Anvil enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-land card from your hand. Spells you cast that share a card type with that exile card cost 2 less to cast. So if we pitch an artifact with Semblance Anthem, once again, all of our artifacts coming in cheaper. Nissa, Who Shakes the World, my favorite card in this deck because for some reason, half of the games I play with this deck, this card is allowed to ultimate. I don't know why. Its static ability is almost useless in this deck, I might add. Actually, no, it's the wrong one. This one is stupid good. Whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an extra green mana to your mana pool. So every forest we control taps for 2 mana. We play nothing but forest because we're mono green. One of the handful of mono color decks I actually have in Commander. I need to actually... It's got 5 loyalty. +1. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on one target non-land creature you control. Untap it. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste. That's still a land. The -8, though. It boggles my mind that people allow me to use the ultimate on this card. Search your library for any number of forest cards and put them into play tapped. That's basically what it reads. Oh, and lands you control are indestructible. You get an emblem, lands you control are indestructible, and then you get to search your library for every forest you have in the deck and put it out onto the battlefield. I think it's basic, though. No, just forests. I mean, we play nothing but basic forests in the deck. But, yeah, that's stupid. And for some reason, people let me pop the ultimate off on that way more than I anticipate. Emerald Medallion, they reprinted it, and I bought a couple of them. Actually, I bought this one in the Ruby. For a 2-drop artifact, green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. We will take all the mana helping that we can get in this deck. Because remember, without creatures on the board, Ghalta is a 12-drop. And then Shamanic Revelation, 3 and green for a sorcery. Draw a card for each creature you control. You gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. In a pinch, this has saved me a bunch of times. That is the Ghalta deck. That is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. So if you see me bust this out, kill Vanessa. All right. And also, it's a green Game-Genic box as well. Long, kind of like the other one. It's a green Game-Genic box. Long one, kind of like the other deck. I like these more than the ones that just stand up straight. That being said, though, that's part 3 of my Commander decks. As I'm going to stop this recording. I'm doing it on my cell phone now to make it look better. But, that's part 3. The finale is the next part that's going to come up, and that is the last. And that is going to be the last 6 decks, and man, they're all home runs on this one. My name's been Dom Douglas. Thank you for watching on XWW's Wrestling YouTube channel. Also, don't forget, XtremeTVOnline.com, $4.99 a month. The first 5 days are free. We are the standard for your wrestling content in the Carolinas. And may your top deck always be mythic.